No more vanity. A little bit of vanity. Here we go. Today is Giving Tuesday, the day after Cyber Monday and Small Business Saturday, and do whatever the hell you want Sunday. It's been an interesting few days. Giving Tuesday is one of these things that I have some deep ambivalence about. The last two Giving Tuesdays since Lace on Race has been in existence in 2018 and in 2019. Let me give you a little bit more light. There you go. In 2018 and 2019, I kind of ignored it, but it actually is a good juggernaut. And it does have value, although I still have issues with some of the value that it holds and what it's saying and what it's saying about us in terms of giving and all that fun stuff. What is in my eye? Gotta get that out of the way. Okay, I can see you again. Howdy. Okay, we are going to participate in Giving Tuesday. As it happens, Giving Tuesday also happens to be December 1st, where a lot of exciting things are happening. It's my dad's birthday. So, everyone look towards the west by southwest and wave at Hubert Watkins, who is probably still sleeping, honestly, but he's going to feel it. He'll feel it. And I'll tell him you guys all said happy birthday. So that is one way that we can do Giving Tuesday. We can make sure that we give tangible love to people that we know. It is an interesting thing, an interesting tradition that we do towards the end of the year. Some of it's practical for tax reasons, but also some of it is part of the whole giving season where all of the major spiritual traditions um, come together and they all have holidays. And I agree that those holidays should have a component of not just your friends and family, but for people outside. And I see the point of Giving Tuesday. That said, the way that Giving Tuesday is often expressed and the parameters that surround Giving Tuesday are problematic as hell. I said it. One of the things that Giving Tuesday does is it funnels a lot of money to larger charities. Yay ish. But it also makes sure that any charity, large or small, is a 501c3, a registered nonprofit. You guys know how I feel about registered nonprofits, even as we are in the process of becoming one. I think they're racist and classist and exclusionary, period. Right now, that sound you hear is the sound of my 4 staff people doing this to their foreheads. She is the queen of self sabotage. Why can't she just ask for Giving Tuesday money and call it a day? Because there is a lesson in everything. And if I'm going to ask you to think of us during Giving Tuesday, there is going to be something that we're going to attach to it to make it more meaningful than you just throwing money at something. That's not how we roll. How we roll is looking at what's at face value and also digging deeper. And by the way, we're going to talk about that meme that I did that nobody liked, but that I really do. And I'm going to break it down as to why. But that is another video for today after I do everything Laura needs me to do. It'll be my dessert. It's also the first day of the month. So technically, it's also the ask. I'm actually going to do a formal ask that's just for us tomorrow. And you guys are going to see it and you're not going to be resentful of it and you're not going to roll your eyes at it and you're not going to go, she asked us for money twice in a row. These are two separate things. And I need to continue the discipline of doing the ask because we can't keep on running major deficits like we did last month. And Giving Tuesday is a one off. And I want to do it a little bit differently because, as my staff would say, I am absolutely the queen of self sabotage, seeming self sabotage. Let's go back to what I was talking about how only 501c3s can be listed on Facebook. So you can't necessarily, you can't at all promote an organization or a person who is doing amazing work but is not a registered 501c3 nonprofit. Most of the people who are doing cutting edge work, not social work per se, but cutting edge work in terms of radically feeding the houseless and the food insecure, radically challenging systems and institutions, radically envisioning a better world. And I've said this about this issue on my birthday. On my birthday, we did the birthday fundraiser for Dignified Learning Project, which is a 501c3 and is also our fiscal sponsor. That said, I had reservations then and now about, yes, the classism and the embedded racism in it. It costs money to do a 501c3 to make one up. And even though it's a relatively small amount, it's still daunting for a lot of people. There's more paperwork to fill out. And when you are one person doing food distribution for marginalized people at the border between San Diego and Tijuana, while you have a full-time job, and believe me, I know what it feels like to run an organization while you have a full-time job, it's not easy to, they may not want the increased control that and the increased negative scrutiny that a 501c3 might bring. And also 501c3 brings with it certain requirements like a board, like bylaws. They may not want it. Maybe all they want to do is load up their truck and go down to the Tijuana border and make sure that people who were food insecure are not, to make sure that people who are in the desert do not die of dehydration. All of those things are really important. And Facebook conveniently slides over everyone who is doing that kind of work, which means it slides over most people who are doing the kind of work, frankly, that I want to fund. So this Giving Tuesday is going to be just a little different. Yes, I need to say this plainly so that basically all of the staff can stop holding their breath for me to say it. I want your money for Giving Tuesday. I absolutely do. I would like you to be able to partner with us in this way, in this one-off way. Yes, I do. I want to siphon off money from mutual aid places and the junior league. I have no problem with that. Whatever you were going to give the junior league or country friends or any of those really big organizations that basically do galas. I don't know how they're doing it in the time of COVID, but they do galas and they raise $500,000 and somehow they only managed to give $10,000 to the actual charity. But that was a really great looking chandelier and those hors d'oeuvres were awesome. I've been to enough charity functions to kind of go, just how much is that going? And I could have bought that little crudité for $1 and then given the whole shebang over. But in any case, let's talk about what we can do to both participate in Giving Tuesday and also, wait for it, because it's me, subvert Giving Tuesday. I want to turn Giving Tuesday on its head. Not just the organizations that Facebook approves of. Because I always, even though I think that Giving Tuesday can do a lot of good in a lot of ways, I also give some side eye as to who major corporations lend their legitimacy to. Yeah, that needs to be talked about too. So, in our version of Giving Tuesday, yes, once again, I will say it overtly. Give us money. Yes, yes, yes. Make us part of your Giving Tuesday plans. But we also know that we are not the only game in town, that we have been lucky enough to be relatively solvent. And even though we didn't meet last month's goals, we have pretty much consistently been able to meet our goals. That's allowed me to do work that I love, and I'm very grateful. But I am not the only game in town. Does that make sense? So, what we're going to do here is half and half, half and half, a portion. It can be your own ratio. But I want you to find an organization or a person that's doing really good work, but that is definitely flying underneath Facebook's radar. If you want to give to a if you want to mention a certified 501c3, please feel free. In my Facebook feed this morning when I was scrolling, I noticed that a lot of people I know are saying, "Hey, it's Giving Tuesday. I've given to this person or this organization. You do it too." And I think that's great. If you have an organization that Facebook approves of, I am not saying don't drop it in the comments, but I am saying I want to make sure that we give a lot of love to people who Facebook ignores, to organizations whom Facebook ignores, like me, actually. So, yes, I'm in the mix, but also others. In San Diego, I can think of very few nonprofits or organizations or individuals that I personally support with my own funds where I get a tax receipt. And that is sometimes part of the mission drift and the morph of giving, that you expect something in return, a little slip, like you give away 5 pairs of 10-year-old pants and you get a little slip from the Salvation Army or Goodwill. And that is a tangible reminder. And also, those 10-year-old pants you get to claim are really still $50 each. No, I think one of the things about not being um, a 501c3, and people have the additional motivation of a tax incentive to give, is that I think it's a shitty reason to give. It still benefits you in some way. And now that, even though these days it's harder to do, because everyone has that heightened standard deduction, even the idea that, well, I'm getting something out of it, there's an air of legitimacy for this corporation. That's another reason, or this nonprofit organization, that's another reason why I sometimes have some real problem about, um, there are organizations that rank nonprofits and tell you whether or not they're good or bad. They have a somewhat complex algorithm or somewhat complex criteria, um, program dollars as opposed to staff administration dollars, um, how much goes towards direct giving, all of these metrics. And some of the metrics are good. It makes sure that the organization is legit and has staying power. That said, we would fail utterly, utterly, if we were to apply those standards to us. Since basically we're an intellectual property organization, basically it's everything that's in Monoghan, except for when we partner with other people for direct giving or for our community partners, um, it is going to administrative expenses and for salary, which means people would go, oh my gosh, 60% goes to salaries? That's a crappy ratio. And then we would fail. So, what is being said here is that there's a certain amount or certain type of organization or charity or funding opportunity that Facebook approves of, and a certain type that they don't. What they approve of is charity, what they approve of is social work. What they don't like is the intellectual and the internal. They don't like people writing things about the systems and institutions that make it necessary for people to go and be secret Santas for a needy person. And I think that there's a place for both. I want to make sure there is a place for both. As a matter of fact, I just put what is for me a significant amount of skin in the game for a family that is not doing as well as they should. And I can be mad at systems and institutions, and I can work my bottom off. I almost said another word. I can work my bottom off to confront and dismantle those systems, but in the here and now, they still have need. So I really think that it should be a both and. There should be room for organizations and individuals who challenge and confront the systems that make charity and social work necessary. Both are important. Over here, the charity, stop the bleeding, bind the wound. Over here, we get to talk about what made that gash in the leg and the heart and the soul in the first place. So, yes, go to the first aid aisle, which is what charity and social work is, but also look at the systemic. It's almost like we're a holistic practitioner or a naturopath or an osteopath or a chiropractor, where we're not just looking at what's in front of us, but we're also looking at what's going on inside of us. And that is not just individuals, it's also systems and institutions and the collective consciousness and the culture of the world that we live in. That is why this is so important. So that's what I want to do here. During this time of Giving Tuesday, yes, please think of us during your Giving Tuesday giving. Um, I have to also say this, and so far as uh, I have ambivalence about Giving Tuesday, I do want to mention this. Yesterday was Cyber Monday, and Giving Tuesday came about as a response to Cyber Monday. If you're going to throw billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to the retail machine, then it is worth it to look at how you can also benefit your fellow woman and man and child. It's also of benefit not to just think of this season of giving as only for your friends and family and the people that are in front of you on your own personal plate, but to look outward. In terms of that, I completely endorse the idea of Giving Tuesday. I think the execution is shoddy, and I'm going to fix that here. So, in the comments, where you are allowed to say really nice things about the wig, but that should not be your focus. In the comments, I want you to be able to affirm that you are participating in Giving Tuesday. I hope that part of that affirmation includes lace on race. There, I said it. Breathe, staff. Breathe. But I also want you to remember that it's not just about the health and sustainability of Lace on Race. That as soon as we look inward and we take care of ourselves, that we also need to look outward and see the need in other places and execute a considered and intentional praxis there as well. That is an incredibly big deal. There are articles and polls that show that Americans as a whole, as a group, are the most giving people like on the planet. Like, we give a lot. It gets shaky when you break it down, though. Things that benefit you are the ones that tend to get the most money. So churches are considered part of that giving. So are hospitals. So is that charity function that I was talking about, where you give $100 and you get a $10 credit day. There are quite a few things that it's charity. Yes, it's a 501c3. I mean, there are golf clubs that are 501c3s. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? So if you break out the kind of giving that Americans do, it tends to be things that on the aggregate also benefit themselves. Even things that are unabashedly good things, like blood banks, like charities for different diseases. Usually you put skin in the game with a given disease because either you've had it or someone you love has it. Again, it's benefiting you. But our praxis has to go beyond that. Our praxis has to go beyond that, which is why we are going to be resurrecting the Dimes Challenge and the Envelope Challenge when we launch Lace on Race Cafe, because we need to have deep talks, a lot of deep talks, a lot of deep talks about how we give and the ethos and the ethics around giving. But for today, Giving Tuesday, here are the instructions. Consider Lace on Race deeply consider Les on Race. This is me giving you the hard sell. Really think about Les on Race. You know, when you're in line at the grocery store, I want you to think about Les on Race. When you're tying up your trainers so that you can take a run, think about us. Okay, enough of that. Let's pivot. Also, think about other people. So, down in the comments, yes, yes, I engaged with Giving Tuesday with Les on Race. Thank you. But your very next sentence, what needs to be, has to be. And I also participated in this way. Again, nonprofits are not prohibited. You can use nonprofits, but I want you to get curious. Do a couple of extra clicks and find some organizations that will not get Giving Tuesday love except for us. For me, that is going to be Food Not Bombs. It's also going to be Bertie Gutierrez, Bridges Across the Border. We have partnered with them before, and they are amazing San Diego organizations that do both things on both tracks. They challenge systems and institutions while they give direct aid. And I love that. I love it. So, something for us, something for them. And then you can pivot to tomorrow when I'm going to ask you for money again because I'm shameless. But seriously, Giving Tuesday is indeed serious. It gives you a chance, if you allow it to. This can be a very important praxis exercise. Who is doing good work that I don't know about because I haven't taken the time to know about it? And yeah, you're allowed to cheat. When people start putting things in the comments and you go, "Ooh, that's a good one." And by the way, if you can, do links. Do links. So it's like, "Oh, click. Food Not Bombs. Click. Bertie Gutierrez." Do those things. And then people will go, "Oh, yeah." Another really good San Diego institution. Pillars of the Community. Oh, I like what they're doing. Click. It can also be the big 800-pound gorillas. There are big organizations that are doing really good yeoman work, and they should not be forgotten. And it might seem like I'm denigrating them, and I'm not. But what I do not want to do, they're already going to get the love. You don't have to worry about whether or not the Red Cross is going to see a huge bump in donations today. I care about the people who would be forgotten and overlooked and ignored, because that is so part of our ethos, isn't it? That we focus our attention and our heart space and our head space and our gut space to people who would otherwise, because of the system that we live in, would be ignored and undervalued. I'm asking you to find those people, those organizations, and look them in the eye and value them. You're going to see a couple of posts up with some amazing graphics and some amazing copy for Giving Tuesday. And I want you to click through very plainly. I want you to click through. I want you to live out your praxis in this way during this time of Giving Tuesday and my daddy's birthday, which I think is kind of a nice little conflation. You can think of very curmudgeonly and profane and funny and wise and smart as a tack Hubert Watkins when you were participating in Giving Tuesday. If it weren't for me, no one would know Hubert's name. But Hubert was a pioneer. He was one of the first Black men after the newly integrated Navy in the 50s and early 60s that was allowed to do things other than scrub and grub. He was allowed to train to be an airplane mechanic. And almost 50 years later, when he hung up his overalls after 24 years in active duty military and then another 20 odd years civil service on the same flight deck, instead of wearing Navy coveralls, he wore overalls from Oshkosh. But the idea is that he did things no one else did. And as he put it, not a plane he ever touched ever fell out of the sky. And this was a pioneering man. My father is as much of a pioneer in this way, as much of a hero. as the big names that we think of when we think about people crossing the color barrier. But guys like him who learned how to be sheet metal mechanics will never get paragraphs or chapters in Black history books. We want to make sure that the people who are doing good work in the here and now, right now, that will never get chapters in books, that will never get interviews with the Washington Post, that will never get the love that they're supposed to get it. So, yes, focus inward. Make sure that this space, this entity stays viable and sustainable, and then focus out. Everyone can find one. And if a significant amount of people do this, it will not be a net negative for Les Race because, it is a risk. I'm just telling you to take half of what you would give and give it to someone else. But if twice as many of you or three times as many of you who would normally listen to this and respond to it tangibly, if more of you did this, it wouldn't be a problem. And not just the usual suspects, y'all. Everybody. Everybody. Can you imagine if even 1/4 of 10,000 people said, yes, I'm going to partner with Les Race and I'm going to look outward? This thread on this video and in the post that Meleza is going to do, they should have as many comments as the yoga appropriation thread. They should have as many comments as that meme I posted yesterday that's already up to 150 comments, I think. We should do as well here, and that is your charge. So, Giving Tuesday, it's a time to think of ourselves and a time to look outward and a time to remember who we are and express it tangibly. Happy Giving Tuesday.